Vanguard!
After a long break, which many thought was her retirement, the legendary star makes her comeback. With a new album, she cemented the title of Aurora Star with yet again a record-breaking self-titled album named Coral. Aurora Star Coral makes her debut into standard Vanguard with some record-breaking value gain. She, alongside her right chain, reintroduces the bounce mechanic from which Bermuda Triangle was most known for, but on top of that brings a whole new repertoire of acts which is fitting of the Aurora Star. Coral supports this with two unique abilities. Her first passive Vanguard skill will turn all Coral's criticals into 2 when you're soul blasted 4 cards that turn. This means you get an extra bonus on top of resolving soul blasting skills. But it also means this deck will not use Force 2, as this ability cannot stack with Force 2, which means we go for high power, which is seen perfectly with her second Vanguard ability. This allows her once a turn for the cost of 2 soul and 1 counterblast to return a normal unit from our field and our drop zone to her hand, and if we return 1 coral, she will get 15k power. This ability gives us a lot of value. Using it will fulfill half the condition to give all corals 2 crits. If we fetch 2 cards, it's a controlled +1 that doesn't draw from deck, which is nice as this deck goes fast through its deck size. And the bounce effect also allows us to reuse on place effects and rebuild the board if needed. That makes Coral an insane value engine on top of the powerhouse numbers with crits. But Coral is only as good as she is thanks to the transition she made as a star and thanks to a wonderful supporting team which can be seen in the support cards. When we go through the right chain, we have the grade 2 Coral Shiny Star Coral. This card allows us to build solid amount of soul, as every time she is placed, she will generate 2 souls, which helps us fuel for other Soul Blessing 2 cost cards, but it also is for her own skill that allows her to become a solid 25k beater, which synergizes really well with Aurora Star. Next up the chain, we have Fresh Star Coral. Just like Shiny Star Coral, we can get a lot of soul when calling her to the field. She also can become a nice 30k booster, and as a Vanguard right target, she gives us a cycle that goes towards the soul, which is really nice for Coral. For the direct support cast, we have Glooming Moon Mira. This grade 3 is a good backup ride as it guarantees us to get Aurora Star Coral for our next turn. As a rearguard, she can block opponents from using protect markers, but can also put her opponent in an awkward spot if they don't have enough triggers to defend themselves. Another guard restrict unit is Charming Make Piao Liang. This grade 2 gives all of her attacks a Battledore guard restrict, which can be annoying if they have too many PGs in hand, as they are forced to waste a lot more cards from hand than normal. From Caliphral Prostril, we have from Caliphral Prostril, Caro. This is a great supporter as it not only can fetch our corals, which helps with Mira's guard restrict, but it costs synergize really well with the deck, as it combined with any other soul blasting skill is enough to activate the free crits. With all the soul blasting, you can use some extra ways to generate them, and for that we have Electro Techno Fico. This grade 1 not only gives us more soul, but it gives a significant power boost on the board for a single counterblast. And lastly, we have Mini Sparkle Param. This unit gives us even more benefit from soul blasting units, as it becomes a solid 18k booster for free, which is really nice in any situation. Coral is a very resource heavy deck, but more in a sense that you cycle through your soul on an intense pace. So you need to be wary that you don't go overboard, as deck out is a serious thing if you don't keep track of your deck size. Counterblast on its own shouldn't be a big issue, as the deck only needs 1 single counterblast a turn from turn 3 onwards, but Bermuda Triangle has ways to recoup that as well if you want to play a more counterblast heavy list. Triggers are very easy for this deck list, it's all about crits, and that is for several reasons. First off, you swing in with really high numbers and 2 crits, so being able to then pressure with 3 crits can close games really early, which is needed as deck out is a serious problem. Then that flows in our other reason, because deck out is a serious issue, running extra draws can only put you in more danger of decking out. But a third thing is that Coral can bounce back normal units, so it can bounce back the grade 1 PG for extra shield value, so you can have room to run more crits. As for markers, this deck can only be played with Force 1. It swings in hard and you can give your coral units the natural crit of 2, making Force 2 effectively useless 99.99% of the time, so always go for Force 1 when piloting a coral focused strategy. Aurora Star Coral is all about an oppressive beatdown playstyle, but with the diverse support cards and the engine focuses around soul charging, soul blasting and bouncing field and drop zone cards, opens the deck up to a lot of different strategies, and in this video we will tackle 3 different playstyles. One that focuses on reusing on-place effects with the bounce ability to get the maximum value out of our cards. Another list that combines the Pacifica cards with the Coral engine to add another deadly finisher to the build. But before all that, let's take a look at the Coral list we can build straight from Crystal Melody that uses different guard restricts to achieve victory. This list contains all the direct Coral support cards from the set, from the Coral right chain to the 2 Coral guard restrict cards and even the general support cards. The strategy of this deck is to build up soul so you're able to unleash Aurora Star Coral's passive ability turn after turn. You can use a couple of strategies. You can play a more defensive game to outlast your opponent by using Aurora Coral's ability to bounce back a grade 1 or grade 2 Coral from the field and a PG from the drop zone to keep up the defensive value. This is a great strategy against a deck that goes fast through their deck or in a mirror match. In terms of an offensive strategy, you can go for 3 different playstyles. You can go for the direct beatdown. This is having 3 corals in the front row, give them double crits and up their power to insane level and do this turn after turn until your opponent can't keep up. Another way is to not directly go for high numbers, but utilize Piao Liang to yet still force more guard from your opponent. This is great if you miss the cards to effectively push. And the final strategy is to collect 3 Aurora Stars and combine them with Mira. If your opponent doesn't have 3 draw PGs or a handful of triggers, they can easily lose that turn. That is the basic playstyle of Coral. Control your resources and beat your opponent down with high power and extra crits. Now let's take a look at the different list that uses the bounce aspect to its full potential and to get an idea how to use Coral in a different way. We see that the main core of the deck stays the same with the right chain and the different support cards. However, we do have 2 different cards in the mix that makes the deck operate on a different level. We have Chocolate Love Heart Leads a Lot that gives the deck a solid early game, which it lacked to some degree, but also late game can give us some extra pluses as well as a potential extra soul if we need it. And on top of that, we have Best of Best Isabelle. This gives us another way to Soul Blast cards to achieve for Soul Blast a turn, but it also gives a bit more power and potentially extra draws. This build has a more emphasis on the early game, so we can come in swinging a lot sooner to close games a lot sooner to combat the deck out problem. We can utilize the Coral's bounce ability so we're able to reuse cards like Caro, Lieselot and Isabelle alongside the normal right chain of course. Isabelle also has another function. It makes the Mira Aurora Star play a bit more consistent. The issue with that play is that your rearguard Corals won't hit for natural high numbers outside the force markers of course. With Isabelle, you not only can give your both rearguard columns an increase of 5k power, but combined with the 2 Soul Blasts of the Vanguard, you can give the columns the 2 crits you want them to have. Also with the introduction of yet another 2 Soul Blasting unit, it becomes easier to always achieve the extra crits, even in a scenario where you don't have the counterblast to use the Vanguard's ability, as we have 3 other units that can help us, making Param also more consistent. Now that you know everything about Coral that you need to know to build and play the deck yourself, let's put all the information to the test with the creation of this unique list that combines Coral with another main strategy that is Pacifica. This list is very similar to the previous list, only this time we replace Isabelle with Lavender Missy Lepro and change the ratios to open up the room to run for Top Idol Pacifica. Top Idol Pacifica is a solid Vanguard unit that becomes stronger and stronger the more copies you have of her on the board, which can be a very scary finisher if you have 4 on the field. And as a support card, we have Lavender Missy Lepro to get 4 copies of Pacifica to our hand on a more consistent basis. The idea of this deck is to play with the Coral playstyle, but thanks to the inherent nature of Coral to go fast through our deck, with all the excess soul charging, you will hit Pacifica soon enough, and you can fetch them from the drop zone with Coral's bounce ability to collect them over the course of the game. Also hitting them off of Lieselot is also a pretty nice occurrence. And in the case you have gone through quite a lot of cards, but still haven't seen most of your Pacificas, you can use Lepro to fetch them from your deck. and paying the cost for Pacifica won't be a big issue as you have more than enough soul. So if you manage to get 3 copies, you can even go into Pacifica and use Caro to fetch the final piece. Coral and Pacifica are a nice combo and they don't interfere each other as they both use the same resource pool and they both rely on Force 1 to get the most pressure. Aurora Star Coral is a fresh take on the old Bermuda playstyle that focuses on bouncing cards, but at the same time feels similar to the latest iterations of Coral that was created during the end of the G era. Coral swings in hard with multiple crits, but it can be tricky to manage your resources without going overboard and threaten yourself with deck out. So it's important to learn what the right pace is for the right matchup. Coral has her grand return to the big stage, but just like any big star, it's important to get the correct pace to attain the spotlight, as when a star burns too bright, they might die out too soon. So it's up to you to prevent that from happening. And that wraps up the deck spotlight for the Queen Aurora Star Coral herself. If you're interested in more deck spotlight for Bermuda Triangle from the Crystal Melody set, then check out these videos where I went over the deck spotlight for Crystal Popstar Eve as well as Top Idol Pacifica. And otherwise, if you're interested in Top Idol Riviera, then stick around as that is the next deck spotlight we're gonna cover on the channel. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/Vanguard Insider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, then why not head over to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!